For cutting specifically, the 25mm DA is your better choice. We have a system. We have pads designed specifically for each machine. A review of the DIY Detail polishing system. Hi, I'm Ivan.
And I'm Mark.
And this is DIY Detail. Today I've got a special guest, Mark from Car Care Co. in Australia. And he's our master distributor in Australia. And he had a few questions about the polishing system. We haven't done a polishing system review in a while, so I thought we'd go over it with Mark, answer his questions, and at the same time introduce you to a few new people in the group. Mark, before we start any video, protect your hands. The important part of detailing is to protect yourself, and that is what the gloves are for, because we will be handling some chemicals. The basis of any polishing, of course, is the tools. We need tools to do that. In the DIY line, we have 4 tools to work with. First of all, we have our corded tool. Mark has the 25mm dual action machine there, 25mm. So it's a dual action machine, meaning the pad rotates, but it also oscillates.
So in Australia, we've had DA machines obviously for many years, but we carry the 15mm and 21mm.
Right.
You've introduced a 25mm machine. Why would you use a 25mm DA? For what purpose? Where does it benefit us?
Yes.
Better for cutting, better for polishing? Can you explain?
Actually, better for both. So for cutting specifically, the 25mm DA is your better choice. The longer the stroke, the more abrasive movement you have, but at the same time, the smoother that abrasive movement. With a short stroke machine like an 8mm machine, what happens is the machine is changing directions. And let me show you here. So if I have a pad, if we have just a rotary, it spins. When we have the oscillation of the 25mm machine, it's doing this as it's spinning. So it's going around in a 25mm orbit. 8mm machine, which is a very popular one in the industry, that orbit is very small. So even though the listing on the machine might say that it's 5,000 orbits per minute, that is not actually very fast. Because if we look at the abrasive movement, so if we take one of these points and imagine that there's a piece of abrasive on it, with that oscillation, an 8mm machine has an abrasive speed of 3.6 meters per second if we're looking at 5,000 orbits per minute. If we look at the 25mm machine, it's 10.6 meters per second. So a lot further, the abrasive is going a lot further, a lot faster, giving more cut. And to compare to a rotary at 800 RPM, at the edge of the pad, the outside edge of the pad, it's only 6.7 meters per second. So the cutting action of the 25mm machine is actually giving you the most cutting action. But because the oscillation and the abrasive isn't changing directions very often, because if we look at the oscillation of a machine, it's sort of an odd shape. It's not always going in one circle. That means the abrasive is trying to change directions as you're combining the oscillation and the rotation. The longer the stroke, the better the finish. Now be in one plane and stay in that plane. With the rotary, the reason you get the best finish with the rotary is because that abrasive is locked into the pad and it's always going in one direction. The abrasive isn't flipping, it isn't turning, so it's moving in that one easy direction. But that being said, the 25mm DA can cut, can polish, can do anything you want. We also have a rotary in the line, and the rotary is actually my favorite tool. They're quieter, they're simpler, less going on with the rotary. Our rotary has a double gear system. So normally with many rotaries on the market, your motor is turning in this direction, there's a gear that changes the rotation 90 degrees, and your pad rotates. Just one gear. For us, we have an intermediate gear, meaning we have a 25-to-1 reduction. The advantage of the 25-to-1 reduction compared to a normal polisher that's got about a 4-to-1 reduction is the motor is actually turning faster. The reason we want the motor to turn faster is for cooling. We want to keep air moving through this machine as fast as possible to keep it from overheating. And especially when you're polishing at a low speed, trying to get a good finish, you'll want to be somewhere between 600 and 800 RPM. At that low speed, you have very little air movement if your fan is too small. That's why we have oversized fans on both our corded and cord-free machines to keep that air moving through the machine so it doesn't overheat.
And one thing I've noticed about that, I've tested this with the cord-free machine
Yes.
is that I've never used a machine that actually stays so cool.
Right.
And you can run it for 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 15 minutes, constantly, half an hour, and it
Yes.
still stays at the same temperature.
Exactly. That's part of the design. For electrical motors, the worst thing you can do for them is heat. By keeping it as cool as possible, it's going to last longer. It's going to perform better. The bearings are going to last longer. Everything in the machine, the more you can control the heat, the longer the machine is going to be, the more stable it is. There's a lot of advantages to keeping it cool. But there's an expense to that. There's a bit of noise and a little bit on battery life when it comes to the cord-free machine. But I'd rather that trade-off of having 5 minutes less polishing on a battery than breaking down a machine because of overheating.
Especially when you have the second battery. So
Yes.
it doesn't make a lot of difference. The first one runs down, you charge the first one, you put on the second one. So.
Right. And our battery charger is a sequential battery charger, meaning that for the first 80% of that battery, it is loading that battery. It's filling it as fast as possible. So within 15, 20 minutes, you're up to 80% of the battery charge. Then that last 20% slows down and just fills in. The easy way of explaining it, you go to the football stadium.
Which I often do.
Yes. And if there was no reserve seating, they would open the doors, everyone would run in. The first 80% of people would find seats rather quickly. The last 20%, oh, there's a seat there. They start running up and someone sits down and then they have to move around. So the first 80% can get in there quickly, sit down, and then the last 20%, we have to place them a little more strategically. And that's what's happening with the charger. The first 80%, the electrons are just flooding in, not a problem. And then after that, we need to slowly put them in their place to get to that 100%. But the rotary is an often misunderstood tool in this industry. When I started detailing, the rotary was the only tool we had. So we cut with it, we finished with it. In the last couple decades, it's unfortunately gotten a poor reputation because people think that as soon as you touch rotary to paint, the paint's gone. It's actually less aggressive to cut with a rotary than with a dual action machine. I know it's not what you're used to, but when you actually do the math of the abrasive movement and how it works, the DA cuts faster.
Okay. Ivan, so can I ask you a question about that? Because I'm sure it is in the US, but especially in Australia, on the professional side of the industry, the belief obviously still is that rotaries for cutting, DAs for finishing. And obviously minor paint correction, DAs are fine, but no one's going to do heavier cutting with a DA machine. And there's a lot of talk in the industry that, you know, they'll talk about yourself, talk about your videos and your techniques and say those techniques are just wrong. You can't do it that way.
Right.
The way is we cut with a rotary, we finish with a DA.
Correct.
But we've had this discussion many times, and the way you explain it actually makes sense.
Yes.
Right? So, and you've always explained to me that with a rotary machine, because it doesn't rotate uniformly, right? As you said before, it rotates slower around the outside edge of the pad than it does in the middle, right?
Exactly.
Because of that, you're actually not getting uniform cutting. But with the DA, and correct me if I'm wrong in this description, but with the 25mm DA, it's rotating and oscillating, so you're getting much more uniform cutting throughout the pad.
Correct.
Can you elaborate on that, please?
Yeah. So the whole pad is cutting. And just 1 second here. So if we take a pad like this and we imagine that every one of these dots is a piece of abrasive. There's a lot more abrasive on the pad than this, but every one of these dots is a piece of abrasive. With a rotary, it's turning like this. So these outside dots are doing a lot of the work because they're going by very quickly. The inner dots are barely moving. They're not.
So I got it the wrong way around. I said it rotating more quickly on the outside.
That's correct, yeah. On the outside, it's rotating very quickly.
Right.
On the inside, it's very slow.
So I said more slowly on the outside.
Yeah.
So I actually got it wrong. But that's okay.
But,
glad I asked.
yeah, very quickly on the outside, very slowly on the inside. A lot of people really are over-concerned about a dual-action machine stalling. And stalling means you have no more rotation. You always have the oscillation. The oscillation is gear-driven. The rotation is through centrifugal force. When you lose that rotation, you're only losing about 5 to 10% of the cut. So it's not as dramatic as people make it out to be that, oh, it's stalled. Not a big deal. You still have that oscillation. It's the oscillation doing the work. It's not the rotation. But with that oscillation, if we have a 25mm oscillation, every one of those points is doing the exact same amount of work. So instead of having a pad on the surface that the outside is doing a lot of work and the inside is doing very little, With the dual action, the whole pad is doing the same amount of work, and it's doing more work than the rotary. If we look purely at abrasive speed, even the rotary at 1,000 RPM will not cut as quickly as a dual action or 25 millimeter dual action at 3,000 orbits per minute. And 3,000 orbits per minute is a very low speed for a dual action machine. So the cut that you're getting, the abrasive movement is far superior. That's why it cuts faster. Now, human beings form habits. And when you change a habit, it also changes how you view things. An example, you'll drive from Melbourne to Sydney. And there's one road to go from Melbourne to Sydney, pretty much. It takes you X amount of time. If someone were to tell you, Mark, if you take this back road, it's going to save you an hour on the trip. You might take that back road, but it'll feel much longer because that drive from Melbourne to Sydney, you've done it, I don't know how many thousands of times in your life.
I could do it in my sleep.
Yeah, exactly. And you can do it in your sleep is a great explanation because now your mind is capable of doing other things and it makes the time pass by faster. But now if you're on a new route, you're having to think about where you're going. You're having to concentrate on the road. Oh, and what's this? And you're seeing new things. When you do that, your mind is overloaded and it seems like it's taking longer. When you get there, you might look at your watch and go, wow, it actually did save an hour, but it felt like it was 3 hours longer. That's what people have to get over. One other thing that a lot of people notice about our system is the lack of taping. There's no need to tape with our system. Our abrasives are safe on trim. Now, we don't want to use the compound on trim. We don't want to, purposely go over, but if we accidentally touch it, not a problem. The polish will actually clean that up, and we want to polish the trim with our system. It's a safe way of removing oxidation from the trim.
I have a question on that for you.
Yeah.
Piano black.
Yeah.
Now, I know my car at home, I've got piano black, little paneling along the windows. No matter how well you try and take care of it, you're always getting little micro scratches and swirls.
Correct.
Not a big fan of piano black. It looks good when it's looking good.
Yes.
Right? So is it safe to use and should you use it to polish up the piano black?
Yes. The red pad is great at polishing up the piano black. And once you have it polished, at a minimum, put a ceramic coating on it and ideally actually put paint protection film. Paint protection film is the best way of keeping that piano black looking the way it should. And also, we have a system. And we have pads designed specifically for each machine. So this is our cutting pad for the dual action machine. You'll notice how thin the wool is here. It's only 6 millimeters thick, 1/4 inch. That allows the abrasive to stay and also allows the wool to not move too much. If we take our rotary cutting pad,
which is a new pad.
Which is a new pad.
Not available yet in Australia, depending on when
Yes.
people are seeing this video, but this is a brand new pad.
Yeah, this is a new pad. The reason we came out with a rotary cutting pad is we've unconsciously re-energized the rotary in a lot of people's minds. And in doing so, the rotary, yes, it can cut. It's great at cutting, but you need a specific pad. This pad on the rotary is not a good pad to use. The wool is too short and it causes too much heat. Heat when you're polishing paint is never a good thing. Whereas this one, it's the same wool for both, but you'll notice it's much thicker. That thickness allows for better conforming to the surface, which is what you want with the rotary. Also, more air movement, and the abrasive can work a lot longer. Now, when you use this on the dual action machine, because of the shorter nap, it's taking all the advantage of that movement, that 25 millimeter oscillation. Whereas if you had a pad like this on the dual action machine, it wouldn't cut. Because the fibers are moving too much in that oscillation, it's cutting the oscillation down. So people that say the rotary cuts better than a dual action, it's because they may not have used the right pad. I've done multiple tests on different channels on YouTube, not just our channel, of the same pad, the same polish, the same hood, and the dual action machine always gets down to primer before the rotary is even thought of cutting through the surface. So the dual action machine, side by side, is always faster when you compare them because of that abrasive movement.
Can I also ask, in Australia at the moment, obviously 99% of the market don't know about 25mm machines.
No, exactly.
Just introduce them. So you're still going to have the same cutting effect maybe not quite as good, but still your 21mm machines, even your 15mm machines,
right,
should still cut as efficiently as a rotary machine or not? Or
with
does that extra
no,
4mm make a big difference?
yeah, that extra 4 or 10 millimeters, depending on how you're looking at it, makes a big difference. A 21 millimeter will cut faster than a rotary. A 15, we're about equal. So someone that's saying, I tried cutting with a DA, it doesn't cut, ask them what stroke they have. If they have a 15 millimeter stroke, they're pretty much even. The abrasive speed between a 15 millimeter and a rotary are pretty much identical. A 21, you're getting more cut. You're getting a higher percentage of speed for the same orbit per minute. And at 25, obviously, we're getting even more. And that's why we went to 25. We also, in our R&D, tested 26, 27, 28, 29, up to 32 millimeter. Past 25, the engineering in the machine had to change too dramatically in order to achieve what we wanted. The spindle had to increase in size because we could actually break the spindle off of the machine.
Yep.
So there are positives and negatives to every size. 25 is what we found through R&D to be the sweet spot between the most aggressive and the best finish we could get, and at the same time have a machine that's lightweight and is able to function for years to come.
Right, but also, as you said before, depends on the pad too.
Yes.
With your DAs, you've got to make sure you're using an appropriate pad.
Right.
To make sure you're getting the best cutting results.
Exactly. The pads make a big difference. And we have 4 pads in our system. The least aggressive, which is always the way you should start polishing the least aggressive first, is our red waffle pad. Now, the red waffle pad is very unique in the industry. It's the thickest pad available on the market, and that thickness is 1.25 inches or 30 millimeters. That 30 millimeter thickness allows the pad to really conform to the surface. It's a super soft foam. That softness, what it does is allows the pad to conform to curves very easily. The other advantage of a waffle pad over a flat pad is user experience. You're not creating that little suction between the surface and the pad, so it glides a lot easier. And you actually get more contact with a waffle pad than you do with a flat pad because cars are very rarely flat. So the waffle pad conforms better. Something like this, I can go over it quite easily with the waffle pad and touch everywhere. Whereas a straight pad or a flat pad, I'd have to do this, then I'd have to do there, then I'd have to do there, instead of just going over it like that.
Well, what about heat production out of a flat pad versus a waffle pad? So
much less heat.
Correct. So one of the benefits of using a waffle pad is it actually creates less heat.
Correct.
And the heat actually disperses because you've got little gaps between the little peaks on the pad.
Correct.
And so it actually disperses the heat. That's correct?
Yeah, it disperses the heat. And paint is we call it paint. It's a paint system because we have an E-coat, a primer, a base coat, and a clear coat. The clear coat is actually what we're working on. We're not working on the color, but we'll say paint is just an easier word than saying clear coat all the time. When we're working on the paint is a plastic on the vehicle. And when you heat a plastic, what happens is instead of the abrasive shearing or cutting across the surface, it actually rolls. So the abrasive grabs and rolls, grabs and rolls. The rolling can actually be a good thing in some instances, and I'll explain that later. But when you're trying to cut, you don't want an abrasive to roll too much. And if it's grabbing and rolling, it's not going to do that. As the abrasive is rolling, it's not cutting. Right. So we want it to shear the surface. The next pad we have in our system, and if you only have one pad, this is the one to get. This is our yellow waffle pad. It can cut, it can finish. It's a universal pad. If we had, again, just one pad in the system, this is the one to use. The waffle surface, once again, but it's a little thinner. The thinness gives you a little more aggression, a little more cut because of the thinner profile, and more pressure is applied. But at the same time, it's soft enough to give you a nice finish and conform to the surfaces.
But it's still a denser foam than the finishing pad. Than the red pad.
If we look at the two side by side, when we squeeze them, you'll notice the red goes in a lot further than the yellow with the same amount of pressure. So, the softer the pad, in general, the better the finish. There's an exception to every rule. If you're working on an extremely soft paint, a stiffer pad will actually give you a better finish when using a dual action machine. When using a rotary, always the softest pad. When using a dual action machine, the oscillation combined with the rotation will give you a better finish with a firmer pad on soft paint. So if you have a soft, sticky paint that's very difficult to finish, go up to a firmer pad. It might actually finish better for you. And then we have our wool pads. And I've laid them out in order of aggression, and the reason the rotary pad is before the DA pad in terms of aggression is, as we mentioned before, the 25 millimeter stroke DA cuts faster. This pad has a foam interface, open cell foam, so it's going to allow cooling, air movement. It also allows the pad to conform to the surface. It allows you to work flat, but still get over curves, et cetera, et cetera. Many of you have seen online the person with their rotary up on edge like this, an exceptionally efficient way of causing swirls in paint. But the more surface area you can have, the faster you're going to cut. Again, as human beings, we have the impression if we're putting work, if we're forcing on the machine and holding it at an angle that we're going to be cutting faster. In reality, you're not, because you've reduced the surface area. If I have the pad up on an angle, I just have a very small area of the pad doing work. If I have it flat, I've got this whole pad doing the work for me.
Yep. Can I ask a question with that pad, with that particular wool pad?
Yes.
You've got the foam backing on the pad. There's obviously a lot of pads out there in the older style pads that have just got the wool pad and the backing on the pad goes straight onto the machine.
Correct.
And you've got no foam buffer between.
Right.
So can you explain why the foam buffer benefits rather than just having the wool pad sitting directly onto the onto the backing plate?
The interface, the reason we wanted to go with an interface, first of all, is cooling. But secondly, it helps the pad to conform. So when we're going over a curve like this, it's not as hard. So it's not going to bite into the edge as much, less chance of doing damage to the vehicle. Okay.
Is it a better user experience?
Yes.
Because you've got a bit more...
more cushion.
A bit more cushion in between the machine and the car. So it's actually a better experience. Easier to actually use the machine?
Correct, yes.
Yep. Okay, good.
And then our most aggressive pad is our dual action cutting pad. Now, you can use this on a rotary, but I'm cautioning you, it's going to cut paint very, very quickly. So if you're wanting to be aggressive for some reason, you can be aggressive with this, but I highly recommend you don't use this on a rotary. That's why we have our rotary cutting pad. But this combined with our compound is the most aggressive combination we have. In the R&D process, we've actually corrected 400 grit sanding marks using this combination.
Which I've seen.
Yes.
You showed me a video the other day.
Yeah, which, again, we're not suggesting you do that, but it can be done. The other advantage of this pad is the wool structure, even though it's extremely aggressive, using the gold standard polish on a hard paint, this finishes down beautifully. So you can have a one step that cuts exceptionally well, but at the same time, leaving a great finish.
With the wool pad?
Yes. Traditionally, a wool pad on a rotary will not give you a good finish, and a wool pad on a DA will leave a lot of haziness. This on a hard paint, not on a soft paint, but on a hard paint will give you a beautiful glossy finish without the need for doing a second step. And the whole point of our system is to be as efficient as possible and to be as succinct as possible. The other part of the system, obviously, we have the machines. You also need a polish. You need something on the pad. The pad by itself, if you just get it damp, will actually cut. But we want a little more than what the pad can provide. The gold standard polish has been with us since the beginning, and the gold standard polish has a little peculiar thing, the sprayer on the top. A lot of people look at the sprayer and go, spray polish. The reason for the spray polish is very simple. If we tell people to put 4 drops on the pad, everyone's drops will be a different size. Your drops might be bigger than mine, they might be smaller. Some people, you tell them a pea-sized drop, it looks like a grape. Other people, they might as well have used a grapefruit. So, with the sprayer, one pull of the trigger, no matter who you are, gives you the same size or the same amount of abrasive every time. And with the sprayer, the other advantage is when we're spraying it over the pad, we're getting it everywhere on the pad. So we don't have any dry spots. We don't have to waste time tapping the pad to the surface to try to spread the abrasive or quickly move the abrasive to get it on. No, we've got it all over the system in thousands of little drops as opposed to 4 or 5 big drops.
Just a little tip, one thing I found with this system is that when you do spray the polish onto the pad, you need to pull the trigger. If you do too slowly, it streams out.
Right. If you do it too slowly, you'll get this.
Correct. If you pull the trigger, reasonably strongly, it actually sprays, which is what you want. You want that even coverage over the pad.
You want to use the trigger as if it owes you money. In other words, we are spraying at the pad. We're not spraying from out here. We actually want to spray very closely in just half of the pad while it's slightly rotating. So now we've got a nice even coverage over the pad. It's ready to polish. The gold standard polish, depending on which pad you're using, is very pad dependent. So with the red pad, you're going to get a phenomenal glossy finish. With the gold pad, you'll get a great finish and a certain amount of cut. And of course, with the wool pads, you'll get more cut. We were asked a little while ago, and this is another new thing in the system, we want something more aggressive. We want to cut, especially if you're doing fiberglass, boats, RVs, etc. You've got a lot of oxidation to break through. That's where the gold standard compound comes in. Not something I recommend on every vehicle because a couple quick passes will take off 4 or 5 microns of paint rather quickly. It is a very fast-acting abrasive, and it's a new abrasive technology. We've got 2 innovations within this compound because I didn't just want to bring out a rocks in a bottle like everyone else. The first thing is our abrasive is a geodesic structure, and I know you may have to Google it, but if you a geodesic structure is a bunch of triangles put together to form a dome or to form a sphere. And the geodesic structure, what it does, it provides a lot more cutting edges on that abrasive than a traditional abrasive. A traditional abrasive, think of it as a pyramid. So it's a pyramid, and as it's cutting, it's breaking off little parts of the pyramid, and that's why you get a compound that starts off cutting hard and then gets smoother and smoother and smoother, because you're breaking off the peaks of those pyramids. Whereas with the geodesic structure, you have a lot more cutting edges on the abrasive, and we actually want this abrasive to roll. Compared to a standard abrasive where we don't want it to roll, we want it to be lodged in the pad and do its cut. This one we want it to roll, and it rolls slowly as you're cutting, but rolling to a new edge all the time. So that geodesic structure, we have a lot more very sharp edges to work with. Also, it's suspended in a gel. The gel isn't oily, and it allows you to cut extremely quickly and short cycle the compound. You don't need to work a long time with this compound. The way it works when you're set up properly, which means a damp pad on your rotary or on your DA, dampened with a rinseless wash. That's why the rinseless wash is here. We'll explain its use in the system in a second. But you have a dampened pad that keeps it cool, keeps it lubricated, and you have lubrication throughout the whole pad. So even if you don't have polish over the whole pad or compound over the whole pad, you have lubrication so you're not dry buffing, causing marring or swirls. The gel, as it's doing the cut, in removing a lot of clear coat, you have the opportunity to create dust.
That was actually going to be one of my questions to you.
So very little dust is created because of the gel.
But dust will be created because it's more abrasive. You're going to get more clear coat particles.
Right.
Which will contribute to a little bit of dusting. Yes. It's not the product that's dusting.
No.
It's a clear coat you're removing that may be dusting a little bit.
Right. It's the excessive amount of clear coat you're removing that is causing that dusting. Correct. The dusting doesn't come from the product itself, and with many compounds that's the case. It's not the compound that's causing dust, it's what it's removing from the paint. The gel actually helps keep that dust onto the pad. So we're actually using that dust on the pad to actually help contribute to the cut, but at the same time, we don't want dust everywhere over the vehicle. We don't want you breathing dust. We don't want you to have to wash the vehicle after you've compounded it. In the older technologies, if you did a heavy compounding or correction job, you had to wash the car afterwards because you had dust everywhere in all the nooks and crannies of the vehicle.
Also, too, I think it makes it more important that you clean the pads properly between passes.
Correct.
Because if you're removing more dust, especially if the gel is holding the dust in place in the pad, you want to make sure you remove that before you go into your next pass.
Correct.
So it's even more important you clean the pads properly before you continue.
Yes. Pad cleaning is an essential part of the system, and that's why the rinseless wash is here. The rinseless wash we use at our standard dilution of 256 to 1 or 4 milliliters to a liter. That's all you need, not much. We spray it on the pad, we agitate the pad, we spin the pad out at full speed on the machine, and when we spin it out at full speed, it actually, on the dual action machines, will find its own balance point. So the pad will oscillate as you're spinning it, and then all of a sudden it stops oscillating and just starts spinning. That's when you know you've actually balanced the pad perfectly to the machine. So, and the amount of moisture that's left in the pad is between 1 and 2 milliliters, or 1 or 2 grams. It's not affecting the weight of the pad dramatically. It's not wet. You're not going to get sling everywhere when you start the pad up. You just have a little bit of moisture in the pad for cooling, for lubrication.
Can I ask a question about pad cleaning?
Yes.
Just at this point. So professionals will be well set up to clean pads between passes. They'll have their pad washers,
yes,
like you use your pad washer. They'll have their air compressors with their guns to blow out if they need to.
Right.
They may use a brush.
Yes.
Right. So they'll rotate the pad and they'll have a brush, but they know what they're doing.
Yes.
Most enthusiasts.
Yes.
Don't have a pad washer.
No.
And I don't recommend, as an enthusiast, you go out and spend whatever you're going to spend on a pad washer when you're going to use a polisher once every 6, 12 months.
Right.
A lot don't have compressors.
Right.
Some do have small compressors. They might have air blowers that may do the job. Some, especially in ASTA, we inquire about brushes. I'm not a big fan of enthusiasts using brushes because if you put too much pressure on, you may damage your foam pad.
Correct.
Not such an issue with the microfiber or
the wool
pads, right? Not such an issue, but with foam pads, used correctly, it's fine, but you can't guarantee that. So for an enthusiast that doesn't have any of that equipment, right, what is the best way of cleaning the pad between passes?
A very, very simple way, Mark. Rinseless wash in a spray bottle, spray it on the pad, work it into the pad a little bit, and then in a bucket, spin it out. So you're not even removing it from the machine.
But with that spinning, with the spinning process, will that actually, let me put this another way. Will a rinseless wash when you're cleaning, will that then kind of release the dusting?
Correct.
Suspend it?
Yes.
Hold it above the surface so that when you spin it, it'll just
comes out of the
literally
pad.
just fly out of the pad.
Yes.
That's the theory?
Not only the theory, in practice,
that's
how it works. Yeah.
Okay, I've learned something. I didn't know that. So that's fantastic.
The other thing is, you mentioned air. Compressed air for cleaning pads is a very efficient way of destroying your pads.
Yep.
Because the foams, we have to think of foam as little bubbles with membranes between them. The compressed air, or some people use a pressure washer to do it, just as bad. Any forced air or water is actually going to break those membranes apart. So your pad looks the same, but you've basically destroyed your pad. For myself, I'll use one pad to do 10 cars instead of 10 pads to do one car.
Which leads me to another question.
Yeah.
Again, you're getting build up, right, in your pads, right? You're not always cleaning them efficiently, right? And my advice to most customers normally is don't use one pad in a car. For an enthusiast, you're not going to go out and buy 4 or 5 pads, but just try and use 2 pads on a car because you get a lot of build up within the pads, which 2 issues. One, the pad's going to blow out quicker.
Yes.
Like I said before, it's not going to last as long. And secondly, if you've still got too much residual clear coat and product in the pad,
right,
as you're actually polishing the next panel on the car, what's rotating over the paintwork?
Oh, exactly.
Over the clear coat.
Yeah.
So you could actually cause a little bit of damage. So you're saying you'd use one pad on a car, but that's if you're cleaning it properly, efficiently between passes.
Right. So basically, never put clean polish on a dirty pad.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of people, why they overload their pads is they'll do a section, they see that the abrasive isn't working anymore, they'll just add more abrasive to the pad. Wrong answer. If you clean it after every pass, the pad will never load up. So you start with a pad that is brand new and you'll end with a pad that's brand new when you finish washing it. So by washing between every application, and it seems like a bit of time, but in reality it's saving you time because your pad is cutting more efficiently. So you're cutting faster, you're getting a better result. You may not have to do 2 steps. Sometimes if your pad isn't clean, that's when you get holograms, that's when you get micro marring. So by cleaning the pad after every pass, you're saving yourself time. And whether you're a professional or a hobbyist, you don't need an expensive machine to clean pads. The pad washers that are on the market, if you're a professional, it's a must-have. Yep. You can't live. Once you have one, you'll wonder how you lived without it. As a hobbyist, like you said, polishing 1 or 2 cars a year, no, it's a waste of your money. But at the same time, just a spray bottle like I showed, a bit of massaging of the pad, spin it out in a bucket, and you're fine.
Perfect.
Yeah. For the polishing itself, we have the liquids, we have the pads, we have the machines. Let's show you a bit of polishing. So if I start with the rotary, and the rotary, as I mentioned, is a good way of cutting, a great way of finishing. Actually, to me, this is my tool I use for finishing, but we want to show you how this works. Always start with a clean, damp pad. To prepare the pad to work, several sprays of rinseless wash on the pad. Then I run the pad against the pad washer. If you don't have one, you can just do this. That will work. Then lift it up, spin out the excess moisture. And back down to speed 1. Now people ask, why do you have a multiple speed machine? We have speed 1 for working, speed 6 for wringing out the pad. The other ones in between we don't really use. It's actually less expensive to have a variable speed machine than it is to have a 2-speed switch. So that's why we do that, to save you a bit of money. And we don't want too much compound on the pad. It's actually a negative thing to have too much. So just 3.
Ivan, can I ask you a question here?
Yes.
We were talking before about everyone uses different piece size drops, which is why you've designed a gold standard polish to be sprayed on.
Right.
Yet with a compound, it's not a spray compound. So what's the reason why?
It's too thick.
Just too thick?
Yeah, we can't get it. We couldn't get it to spray reliably. So, and you actually need a little more compound on the pad than you do a polish.
Yep. Okay.
That's why we have 3 drops, not 4, not 2, 3. Speed 1, and no pressure on the machine. You know you're done cutting when the surface starts clearing up. When you don't have the when you don't have the compound residue on the surface and it starts to go clear, that's when you know to stop. And you'll see the amount of clear coat we have built up on this pad. That's a bit of compound, but also considerable amount of clear coat. Now in our system, we want to make your life as easy as possible. So, same machine. We take our red jeweling pad, again, a couple sprays of rinseless wash. As the pad is spinning, 1 spray of the gold standard to get it everywhere on the pad. We don't need to wipe off the compound residue. Now, if we're doing a test spot, of course we'll wipe it off to see what we have as a result with the compound, but it's not necessary to wipe it off. If we want to wipe it off, we'll use a rinseless dampened towel. The reason for the rinseless dampened towel, it allows me to not put any pressure. We're using the chemical to break down the polishing oils, and then another towel to finish off. And that's the finish that we got with a rotary and a wool pad. Beautiful, glossy finish. But we can improve on that. And if we were to put an inspection light on this, we might have swirls. Let's take a look. So we have a few rotary swirls, and that's to be expected with a wool pad on a rotary. There's not much, so there's not much to correct. With the traditional heavy wool-stranded pads on a rotary, you cut very effectively, but at the same time, you're causing as much damage to the surface as you're removing. You're just having an equal damage everywhere.
Swirls, holograms.
Yes. So we have basically no swirls, maybe a little hologram, and the finishing pad will take care of that. As I said, we don't have to wipe off the compound residue. It's not a necessity in our system. Two passes is generally all we need to remove any hologramming or swirling caused by the rotary.
And just to reiterate, that's on a speed of 1 on the rotary.
Speed 1.
Yeah.
Yeah. The lower the speed, actually the faster the cut. Because once you increase the speed, you increase heat generation. When you increase heat generation, you reduce cut.
Okay.
We want to keep the surface as cool as possible. To remove the polish residue, once again, the rinseless dampened towel. Some of you may have noticed we're missing one thing in our line, and that's an all-in-one. We don't have an all-in-one because as a professional detailer, it's not something I ever had in my shops. Using an all-in-one, an employee may make a mistake using an all-in-one before trying to apply a coating. Our all-in-one is a very simple system. You polish, you wipe off the residue with the damp towel. While it's still damp, 1 spray of Envy ceramic detail spray, and use your dry towel to work it in. What that does differently is with many all-in-ones, you have the abrasive fighting the sealant or the sealant fighting the abrasive. Now we have the speed of an all-in-one, but we have a better durability because you don't have the abrasive breaking down the sealant and you don't have the sealant preventing the abrasive from cutting.
Can I elaborate on that?
Yeah.
As you know, I've been in the chemical game for over 30 years.
Yes.
Not just in the vehicle washing industry either, in many industries.
Correct.
And I've never been a big fan of all-in-one products.
Right.
So I'm not a believer in wash and waxes. I'm not a believer in cleaner sanitizers in other industries. And the reason being that when you're putting 2 applications into the one product, you're not actually getting the best job done by either of those products.
Correct.
Right. So the same thing with the all-in-ones. It's great if you want to do a quick job and just get that vehicle in and out, or maybe you're doing it at home, you're enthusiast, you don't have the time, understandable. But in an all-in-one, the sealant that you have in the all-in-one is really not doing all that much.
No.
Right? But it's also diminishing from the polishing and the compounding powers of that product.
Correct.
So I'm a firm believer, always have been, and through my training in the early days, if you want to do the best job, you use an application-specific product for each of the jobs you're trying to achieve.
Yes, and that's why we do it that way. That's why I've always done it that way as well, because the sealant and the abrasives, they never combine together. Yeah. They never do a good job. If you actually want to do it with an all-in-one, you can, but as Mark mentioned, you're not going to get the durability and you're not going to get the cut. Yeah. Whereas this, we've got exceptional cut and the durability, and it didn't take us any longer. Because you still have to wipe off that all-in-one. As I'm wiping it off, 1 spray of Envy, not a big deal. Now, if we want to cut with the dual action machine, we'll just grab this one here. Again, we'll start by cleaning the pad. So several sprays on the pad. Now we're going to use speed 2 or speed 3, in that range, whatever is comfortable for you.
Why speed 1 with a rotary and speed 2 or 3 with a DA?
Speed 1 with the rotary, more than 800 RPM with the rotary. Our rotary is 600 RPM, but more than 800 RPM, you're creating too much heat.
Yep.
And that friction actually works against you, that heat works against you. Whereas with the dual action machine, even though it's cutting more, it's creating less heat on the system, on the surface, because of the movement of the pad.
Okay.
Now you'll notice with the DA, no dusting once again, but almost no polish residue or compound residue on the surface. It's all on the pad and in the pad. This is the importance of cleaning your pad after every pass, because something like this is not going to work for you if you add more abrasive onto it. And the cleaning, once again, couple sprays of rinseless wash, either massage it by hand or run it up against a pad washer. Our pad is back to new. Then finishing with the dual action machine. The gold pad, as I mentioned before, is actually a better pad for finishing with the dual action than the red pad. As it's turning, one spray of the gold standard. Our dual action machines, our cord-free machines are exceptionally balanced. Most of the weight is over the head, so they're very easy to hold one-handed. Whether you're holding it by the handle, you're holding it by the head, it's a very simple machine to use. Of course, we recommend using two hands.
And also without the battery on the back of the machine, like with most cord-free machines or cordless machines.
Right.
You've got to make sure as you're polishing, you've got to concentrate on not dropping the handle too much.
Right.
Even though obviously the machine won't be level in any case, but because you may damage the paint.
Right.
You don't have that issue with your cord-free machine.
The distance of the handle is the same as a corded machine.
Yeah.
The whole goal of this machine was to replicate the ergonomics of a corded machine, because the ergonomics of the corded machine have been worked for decades. And the batteries on the end, that's something for myself I've never liked. I love the idea of a cordless machine. I didn't like the placement of the battery. That's why I designed it this way. The weight is concentrated. The balance is exactly the same as a corded machine, just without the cord. And also very important, many of the cordless machines, because of the battery placement, they don't want to make the machine too long. Your hands are too close together. So you end up with your hands too close together. That's hard on your shoulders. It's hard on your back to have your hands that close together. So now we've spaced the hands. This is the same hand spacing from the center of the spindle to the switch as our corded machines and as many corded machines on the market.
Can I ask you another question? I don't know if you've been asked this before.
Yes.
Why did you design the machine for the battery to sit across the machine rather than up and down the machine?
Right.
Because one thing I'll say about the machine, it is not the best looking machine in the market.
Oh, heck no.
Okay, so what was the reason for the design of having the battery going across? It would have looked better, in my opinion.
Yes.
Would have looked better if the battery was going
correct
the length of the machine.
Yeah. In the design process, I actually went through a number of different battery iterations. One of them was like you mentioned, a battery that's slotted in like this. I had one that's slotted in as a 45-degree angle, so it would be lower.
Yep.
I had one that if you remember the frame of a Lotus Elan, I don't know if your car people out there will know what I'm talking about. It's an X frame. So Between the suspension at either end, you had an X and a central backbone. The battery was actually slotted down over that central backbone. The battery was U-shaped going over that. The problem with that one was actually my favorite. But then we don't have a standardized battery. This is a Makita style battery. Any Makita tool battery will fit here. And there's a number of batteries because Makita is one company that allows you to use the shape of their battery.
Right.
And you can buy adapters to fit Milwaukee or Metabo, Flex, DeWalt batteries on this tool. The other advantage of the side-to-side like this, and the reason we ultimately went with this, is it provides actually better balance. Think of someone walking on a trapeze.
Okay.
They're holding their arms out to balance them on the cord. That's what that does. So the weight of the battery, and the reason it's offset a little bit is because of the rotation of the machine. It provides the balance. We could have moved it to this side, to that side, it didn't matter. But by playing in different increments, when we got it here, that was the best balance left to right. So your pad, when it's rotating, actually has even pressure across the whole pad.
Okay. Well explained.
Research and development is an important part of detailing. Damp towel, dry towel. So this area we have a sealant, this area we don't. The reason we don't want to put a sealant on all the time is we want to put a ceramic coating. We have one other polish in our system that isn't really a polish, it's just the name. And that is our adhesion promoter polish. This, again, very different technology. It's a deep cleaner. It's a very, very mild abrasive. That abrasive is there to clean. The majority component of this is tea tree oil. The tea tree oil is a great cleaner, but it also slightly swells the paint. And it's not going to swell it by 5 millimeters, it's half a micron. What's happening with that swelling of the paint is it's opening up the pores, because your paint is actually like a sponge when you look at it under a microscope. It slightly opens up the pores, allowing the coating or sealant, if you want to do it before sealant, to go into the paint as opposed to being on the paint. There's a little bit of SiO2 and a little bit of polysilazane in here, not to provide any protection. They're actually there to lock the paint in an open state. The paint, being a plastic, will always return to its natural state, but it takes about 48 hours for it to do so. So after you've done this, you've got 48 hours to coat your vehicle.
And just to explain too, I'll try and simplify this, but
yes.
When the paint swells, and so the coatings can actually get into the paintwork and form like the one surface with the paint, it's going to bond better.
Yes.
Because if it's just sitting on a normal surface, yes, it'll bond to the paintwork because all coatings are designed to chemically bond.
Yes.
But when it actually gets inside, it's kind of bonding from inside and
Correct.
underneath the surface of the paintwork.
Yes.
Which creates better durability for your coatings.
Correct. Better durability and also a better gloss, better depth of gloss. The other thing that it does, it actually creates a thicker coating layer. Because instead of the coating sitting on the surface, it's sitting in the surface in that matrix of the clear coat. So the two are combining to create a thicker layer.
Right. So, and saying that too, we're not talking about coatings in this, in this video, but when you are, you can still use a prep spray.
Oh, definitely.
No dramas. And we have a prep spray in the DIY detail range.
Yes.
The app is just designed to give you a better starting point for your actually coating application.
Yeah, a better starting point, and it also can be used in extreme cases to rejuvenate a coating. If you have a coating that's been scarred because of chemical assaults, you go through a touch-free car wash and they use very harsh chemicals. That eventually it's not going to remove the coating, it's going to scar the coating. This will heal those scars a little bit. So it just helps the coating to rejuvenate. You'll wash, you'll decontaminate your coating, a quick little pass with this, with the red pad, and very important with the adhesion promoter polish, you're actually not going to use our machines. You're going to use a 2 to 9 millimeter stroke machine because you want the slowest abrasive movement possible, and a 3 millimeter stroke machine, which is your typical random orbital sander, at 10,000 orbits per minute, which sounds like a lot, has an abrasive movement of only 2.2 meters per second. Whereas the rotary at its lowest speed is 4.7 meters per second. The 25 millimeter at its lowest speed is 9 meters per second. So definitely way too much abrasive movement. We're not wanting to abrade the paint with this. We're not wanting to create any heat whatsoever. We're wanting the chemicals and the abrasive to clean the paint. That's how you use the app.
And it's a very quick application too.
Yes.
Because you're not actually trying to work in a panel, you're just trying to literally apply the app to the surface.
You're literally just getting it on the surface. I like to do 2 passes just to make sure I didn't miss anywhere, but it's literally this, and we're done.
Wipe it off?
Wipe it off with a dry towel.
With a dry towel?
Yes.
Okay.
And then you're ready for your sealant, your coating. Yeah. And traditionally I recommend use the panel prep spray of the coating you're applying. Every company, they engineer their panel prep spray for their specific coating. Some of them have fragrances in them, some of them have colorants, and they may interfere with another brand's coating. They've obviously tested theirs with their coating. Yep. The adhesion promoter polish, though, is very different in that it doesn't leave anything on the surface. There's nothing left behind. Therefore, it actually can be used with any brand of coating. Any other questions, Mark?
I think you just about covered it.
Okay, thank you.
So just to let everyone know, we have the complete range of the DIY detailing polishing system available in our stores.
Yes. And
in the stores of our authorised dealers. So you can go and buy these Australia-wide. Just find the appropriate dealer that you can actually go pick something up from.
Excellent. If you have any further questions, comments, ideas, leave them in the comments below. We love answering your questions. We answer every single one of them. And in the meantime, there's another video that you might want to watch about polishing paint right here.